Help me reach 1,000 subscribes. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. I read every comment. Thanks. I didn't walk into that restaurant expecting anything memorable. It was a Tuesday night, quiet enough that the hostess smiled like she recognized loneliness when she saw it. Elizabeth had picked the place, said it was classy but relaxed, which was her way of pretending effort didn't matter to her, when it clearly did. I arrived early like I always did. That was my role back then. Reliable, predictable. Elizabeth was late. 15 minutes turned into 30. I checked my phone twice, then stopped, not wanting to look needy. The waiter came by, water glass already sweating onto the tablecloth, and asked if I wanted to order. I told him I was waiting. He nodded in a way that suggested he'd heard that answer before. While I waited, I replayed the last few months in my head. The jokes at my expense in front of her friends. The way she'd roll her eyes when I talked about work. The comments disguised as humor. Relax, James. I'm kidding. I always relaxed. I always laughed. If this story is already hitting close to home, tap the like button so it can reach others who've lived a moment like this and never talked about it. At the 40-minute mark, my phone buzzed. A message from Elizabeth. Look around, faced with tears of joy. I looked up, confused, scanning the room like an idiot expecting cameras to drop from the ceiling. Another text followed. It's a prank. You're so serious all the time. My chest tightened. I typed back, where you? The dots appeared, disappeared, then came back. I'm not coming. Thought it'd be funny to see how long you'd sit there. A laughing emoji. Another one. I stare at the screen. Heat rising into my face, that slow-burning humiliation that sinks into your bones. The waiter returned. He glanced at my empty seat across from me, then at my phone. Everything okay? He asked. I nodded again. I always nodded. Paid for the water I didn't drink. Walked out into the night, feeling smaller than when I'd walked in. Elizabeth called me an hour later, still laughing. Why are you upset? It was just a joke. I didn't raise my voice. I said I didn't like being embarrassed. She sighed. God, James, you take everything personally. If you were sitting in that booth, phone in hand, would you have stayed as long as I did? Tell me in the comments. Did I overreact, or was at the moment respect cross a line? That night changed something, even if I didn't admit it then. I stayed with her for another year, convincing myself love meant tolerance. But tolerance can look a lot like self-erasure. Elizabeth thrived on attention. I thrived on keeping the peace. We broke up quietly. No big fight. No dramatic exit. Just distance that finally made sense. I rebuilt my life in small ways. New job, new apartment, new routines. I stopped waiting for people who treated my time like a punchline. 5 years passed faster than I expected. One day, I walked into a different restaurant. Same city, different version of myself. I wasn't early. I wasn't late. I was exactly on time. That's when I saw Elizabeth. She was sitting at the bar, shoulders tense, fingers wrapped around a glass she hadn't touched. When our eyes met, her face drained of color. She stood up too fast, knocking her chair back. For a second, she looked like she couldn't breathe. If you believe moments like that don't linger, comment the word respect below, because sometimes it's the one thing people realize too late they should have valued. She opened her mouth to say my name. I didn't stop walking. I passed her without a word, without the version of me that once waited 40 minutes to be laughed at. Behind me, I heard a sharp inhale. For the first time since that night years ago, I understood something clearly. Some jokes don't land because they're not jokes. They're warnings. That understanding stayed with me as I reached the door, steady, grounded, finally aware that dignity doesn't announce itself loudly. It simply shows up when you stop explaining your worth to people who never listen anyway. I didn't look back when I reached the door, but I felt her presence behind me like unfinished business. Outside, the air was cool, grounding. I stood there for a second, reminding myself that I didn't owe anyone closure just because time had passed. That's when I heard her say my name, not laughing this time, not joking. It cracked on the last syllable. James, wait. Please. I turned. not out of obligation, but curiosity. 5 years is a long time to carry a moment, and I wanted to see what it looked like on her. Elizabeth looked older, not in years but in weight. Her confidence, once effortless, now felt practiced. She asked if we could talk. I said we already were. She tried to smile. It didn't work. She told me she thought about that night more than she admitted. Said she'd been immature, careless. Said she didn't realize how much it hurt me. I listened without interrupting, noticing how carefully she chose her words, as if precision could undo impact. Then she said something that explained everything. She said, "I didn't think you'd actually remember it." That was the moment I knew she hadn't changed. Not really. To her, it had been a joke that expired. To me, it had been a lesson that stayed. If this realization hit you the way it hit me, consider sharing this story with someone who might still be laughing things off that are quietly breaking them. I told her I remembered because it was a night I stopped laughing with her and started seeing myself. I told her that leaving someone alone for entertainment isn't humor, it's control. Her breathing quickened. She asked if I was happy now. I thought about my life, the woman I was dating, who showed up when she said she would, the quiet confidence that came from not apologizing for wanting respect. I said yes, simply yes. Elizabeth's composure finally slipped. She said she wished she could go back, that she was different now, that she'd learned. I believed she believed that. But growth doesn't entitle you to re-entry into someone else's life. I told her I hoped she treated the next person better than she treated me. That was all. I walked away, feeling no triumph, no bitterness. Just closure earned, not requested. As I drove home, I realized something strange. The memory that once embarrassed me no longer hurt. It had done its job. It taught me where my line was. If you ever had a moment like that, drop a comment sharing whether time softened for you or sharpened into clarity. Weeks later, a mutual friend mentioned Elizabeth in passing. Said she'd had a panic attack that night. Couldn't catch her breath. Had to step outside. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt distance. Consequences don't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes they arrive quietly, when reflection finally shows up uninvited. I never reached out. She never tried again. Life kept moving, the way it does when you stop anchoring yourself to old versions of pain. Respect, I learned, isn't loud. It's consistent. It doesn't test how long you'll wait to be valued. If the story stirred something uncomfortable or familiar, join the discussion in the comments. Do you think people truly change, or do they just regret being exposed? Different answers say a lot about where we are in life. That night-proved dignity grows when silence replaces explanations, and peace arrives once you stop negotiating your own value. I don't tell this story to paint Elizabeth as a villain or myself as a hero. I tell it because too many people confuse endurance with love. They sit at tables long after the joke's been made, hoping someone will come back and explain themselves. The truth is simpler. When someone shows you how they see you, believe them. And when you finally walk away, walk without needing them to notice. If you found value here, like this video, answer this question in the comments. What would you have said to Elizabeth at the door? And subscribe for more stories about quiet moments that change everything. Respect isn't dramatic, but it lasts.